Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Campbell Kitchen. You're not going to want to miss this. We're cooking a steak better than Peter Luger's. Stick around. Okay, a couple tips and tricks for cooking a steak better than a steakhouse. I'm using Peter Luger's because that's the most famous steakhouse in New York. However, I do think it's slightly overrated, and I do think you can do better at your house. And I'm going to tell you how. First, the beef. You need a prime, dry-aged cut of beef. I'm using a Kansas City. Peter Luger's uses a porterhouse. I don't care much for the filet mignon. I really want that beautiful New York strip, which is right here, okay? See how thick that is? 2 inches. You're not cooking a thin little measly puny steak. You're cooking a big boy steak, all right? Step number 2. You're gonna have to season your beef well. I use a rack, okay? And when I season it heavily, and I just flip it right over. That excess salt falls off. The whole piece of beef is seasoned perfectly and uniformly, and that's exactly what you want. A lot of people say you have to pull out your beef 1-2 hours in advance. I'm gonna tell you why that's not important. I just pulled this piece of beef out of the refrigerator, this one right here. Now, the temperature of the very center of this piece of beef is 36 degrees. I'm gonna let it sit on the counter for 1 hour, and I'm gonna temp it again, and you guys are gonna be shocked at the temperature change.
Okay, are you shocked? It went up 10 degrees per hour. Is it worth it? No.
Number 4, use a cast iron pan or a heavy duty pan that retains heat and use a lot of oil. We're gonna baste a little bit, which is when you add butter to the pan, it foams. You see that in restaurants, they spoon it over. And then I'm gonna show you a little bonus side dish today. I'm gonna do an artichoke scampi. So I think those flavors of parsley, garlic, white wine, and artichokes are gonna go so well with our steak. So stick around, you're not gonna wanna miss this.
Okay, so we're just gonna go through this process pretty quickly. I season aggressively with kosher salt and black pepper, and then I'm just gonna pat it in a little bit. I'm gonna flip my steak over, and the excess is gonna fall in between those little squares on the rack. That's why I love to use racks. They're so useful. And so what we're gonna do once we're seasoning that meat, once it's ready to go, we heat up a pan, put some oil in there, and then we're gonna render our steak fat side down. It's important to render fat side down because if you don't, it's just gonna be a little bit too raw. So you wanna roast it for about 5 minutes, get it nice and dark brown, and then you're gonna wanna roast the bone. The bone helps get that heat to the center and those thick parts. So you're gonna wanna roast that bone really well, about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna flip it on its side. Now here's what I'm gonna do. There's a million different ways to cook a steak. All I'm gonna tell you today is sear it really hard on both sides. I don't care how you do it. I'm just gonna do one side for about 10 minutes, the other side for about 10 minutes. But you want a nice, beautiful sear just like that. It's almost burning, but it's not. That's a beautiful sear. That's exactly what you want. Another little trick that you can do is dry your steak with a paper towel. Make sure it's extra dry. So now once we sear it really well, we're gonna get rid of that oil because that oil is yucky. It tastes really bad. See how that's really dark and just not great. Okay, so drain your oil, turn off the heat, and add your aromatics. I'm adding about 5 cloves of garlic, some herbs from my garden. I have sage, thyme, and rosemary. And then I'm adding about 4 tablespoons of butter. Now that butter's gonna melt, it's gonna foam, and it's just gonna smell as good as anything can smell in the world. Now just temp it really quick. I'm at 85 degrees, so I know I have plenty of room to baste. If you're already at 115, if you're going for that medium rare, if you're at like 105, don't baste for that long. But I'm well below medium rare. I'm gonna turn on the heat nice and low and baste until I get to that nice, beautiful 115, okay? Baste, baste, baste. It adds flavor and it's very relaxing. You're gonna love it. So rest your meat on that rack. And then what I like to do is turn off the heat and crush your garlic and just let your garlic sit in that butter and beef fat and those herbs. Just let them chill in there. We're gonna use them later. Now, infrared thermometer. You don't need to use this, but I'm just gonna demonstrate that it's about 160 right out of the pan. We're gonna let it cool to about 100 degrees. Now, let's cook our artichokes. So I have a different video. I'm gonna leave a link in the description and up above, how to cook the artichokes. We're gonna simmer till tender, and then we're gonna remove the outer leaves, and we're gonna use a little spoon to remove the fluffy choke. This is really easy. It comes out super easy. So just do that with all of your artichokes. They're already tender, they're already cooked, they're good to go. Now we're gonna make a little quick scampi sauce. We're gonna chop a little garlic, chop a little parsley, add a little oil to a pan, and we're gonna sweat our garlic because we don't want raw garlic. We want it to be nice and soft, and it's gonna give that oil a nice garlicky flavor. Once it gets nice and soft, add some white wine. We're gonna reduce that white wine by at least half, and we're gonna add our artichokes right into that white wine. Now, we're just gonna heat our artichokes through because they're already cooked. Once they're heated through, I stirred them in that white wine garlic mixture for about a minute, turn off the heat, Add your parsley, add your butter, off the heat, mind you, off the heat, and you're gonna stir just like, this is called Monte Albert, okay? That's horrible, atrocious French, but what that means is basically mounting your butter, emulsifying it in that sauce. So your artichokes are good, your steak is about 100 degrees, ready to carve. Now, I don't know why I pointed to that drippings. I mean, you can use those drippings if you'd like, but that steak's already so salty and juicy, it's not quite necessary. Also, I'm gonna use pan drippings. So for slicing the steak, I'm not doing it the best way. I'm really kind of being careful and going slow. You can go really quick if you want. I'm no expert at carving these steaks. I've done it several times, but I like to go slow, take my time, and salvage as much meat as possible. Some people just cut right through, leaving a lot of meat on the bone, but I'm just kind of using the tip of my knife and I'm just carving along that T-bone to remove that New York. Once that New York is removed, you can see how it's rested, it's not bleeding all over the place, and it's perfectly medium rare. I'm gonna slice in big, thick strips because I like to slice my meat on my plate in big strips. I don't want it to be like paper thin. I don't think that's great, but you can slice it any way you like. You could cut it in thirds and give it to 3 people or fourths, you know, so on and so on. So just to give you an idea, that steak is perfectly medium rare. It is pink all the way through. And even though I seared hard on both sides, it's not that gray. Okay, that's not really gonna make a difference. Our artichokes have been staying warm on the stove, and I just put the steak on a nice little wooden cutting board, and I'm gonna put those artichokes on top of the cutting board as well, just to serve you a little steak with vegetables. And then we're gonna take those crushed garlic cloves that were just slowly cooking in that pan, and we're gonna add them on top of the steak. Do not throw those out. Those are so incredibly delicious. They're flavor bombs. You're gonna want them, you're gonna love them. Add your herbs, add your salt, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Thank you for watching, and have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Oh man,